Good morning. It is Friday, February the 15th, and this is The Drill. And thank you very much. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States of America today, because I'm the only one that makes the presumption for the status quo. Speaking to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. And the country has been rooked. We've been brainwashed. We've been brainwashed into believing that where you stand politically is where you stand on the, quote, issues. The problem with this idea is it is the Democrats that decided that this is how things should be, and further decided that it was the issues, or decided what it is exactly that the issue should be. That the issue should be abortion and the military or war, that type of thing, and setting up all the issues so that they favor the Democrats naturally. So the truth of the matter is that where you stand politically depends on where you stand on change. If you make the presumption for change, then you are an idealist, you are a liberal, you're a lefty. If you make the presumption for the status quo, then you are truly conservative. And conservatives are not about standing athwart history and yelling stop, but going ahead and asking why. Conservatives are open-minded, not dogmatic. It is the left that is dogmatic. They're the ones that have to adhere to the dogma of socialism, whereas conservatives evaluate everything on a case-by-case basis and make the decisions as to what needs to be done rationally and reasonably. So first thing I wanted to get into today was Op Hawkeye, op_Hawkeye from Instagram. It's an account on Instagram, and they remember fallen soldiers. And today's memorial is for Captain David J.P. Thompson, who passed away 29th of January 2010. He was born May 25th, 1970. He was a U.S. Army captain. And again, he was killed January 29th, 2010, and he fought in Operation Enduring Freedom. So today I am going to be reading, or I'm going to play a clip actually from Rush Limbaugh's app and commenting on it, and then I'll go ahead and get with Ayn Rand, and then we'll go from there. So when I get back, it's going to be Rush Limbaugh. And thank you very much. Welcome back. And it's going to be a little bit of a promo here first before we get to the meat of the issue. So waiting for this to go ahead and load. And as soon as it does, this app is pretty good because he's got little clips from his radio show. And actually you can, it's actually from his Rush Limbaugh 24/7, so they have the Ditto Cam, he calls the Ditto Cam on as well, so you can watch him at the same time. And then they've got a section with transcripts, so you can read the transcripts if you like. Here's the promo, and then what it is Rush Limbaugh has to say, and it's about, you'll see.
A Rush Limbaugh exclusive. From border security funding to the 2020 presidential candidates, Chris has the can't-miss interview on Fox News Sunday.
Tom Cotton, Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas, says the media was Stalin-like in its cover-up of the Green New Deal and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. When she's out there saying that it's a life and death issue, Arkansas Republican Senator Tom Cotton unloaded on the Green New Deal, said the media were complicit in burying the most radical parts of the deal. Cotton was on the radio on Tuesday, discussed the widely ridiculed Green New Deal that aims to implement sweeping changes across the nation. For her part, Ocasio-Cortez has called a Green New Deal a life and death issue, has attacked the Republican Party on climate change. in a classic example of fear-mongering. These people, and Cotton's right, this is Stalinist-like tactics, not just from the media, but from the left in general. U.S. Senator Bob Menendez, Democrat, New Jersey, had a fiery exchange with a reporter on Capitol Hill yesterday when he was asked to comment on the Green New Deal. Henry Rogers, the Daily Caller's Capitol Hill reporter, approached Senator Menendez at a subway station and asked him if he supported Ocasio-Cortez's legislative proposal. Menendez avoided the question and asked where Rogers worked. Rogers said that when he told Menendez he worked for the Daily Caller, Menendez responded by saying he would not answer any questions. An intern who was with Rogers then asked a follow-up question, and tensions rose. Question: I'm wondering why you won't answer questions on the Green New Deal. I won't answer questions to the Daily Caller, period, because you're trash, Menendez said. Why do you think we're trash, sir? The reporter asked. Don't keep harassing me anymore. I'll race to the Capitol Police, Menendez said. This guy's talking to a journalist intern from Chatsworth Osborne Jr.'s website. The Daily Caller is an intern, and here's the United States Senator threatening to call the cops on the guy, all because they're asking him about the Green New Deal. The reporter told Fox News he had no prior interaction with Menendez before this. He was working on a story that was to include the responses of Senate Democrats regarding the Green New Deal.
And let me get that. There we go. So he started out really well on this one because he was talking about Republican and a Republican's response to the so-called Green New Deal, and then slipped into what it is again, how a Democrat was reacting or responding to reporters' questions. And again, I really wish that the right, Rush Limbaugh and others would spend more time talking about conservatives, what conservatives are doing, and is talking about values. And one of the best ways that they can talk about values, and Rush Limbaugh does this all the time, as a matter of fact, he has a segment in here where he makes his prediction about what it is that Donald Trump is going to do vis-a-vis signing the bill for the funding bill that has a billion or a little over $1 billion for the wall, and whether or not Donald Trump's going to sign it. But he's going to make a prediction, and he does this all the time. Makes this a prediction because I guess he thinks that's a sign of smart. Is if you make predictions and the predictions come true, then you must be a brilliant guy. But I mean, in this particular situation, and as in all of the predictions that he makes, they're all 50-50. Either the president will sign it or he won't. So it's like the flip of a coin. You should have a high rate of success with those kinds of odds. But in any case, what he doesn't realize, where he is ignorant, is that the left wants everybody to talk in terms of predictions so that we're not talking in terms of values. And we talk about values anytime we use the word should. That's what Rush Limbaugh should be doing. He should be saying that what it is that Donald Trump should do, whether or not he should sign the bill. And if there's, say, whether or not there's any follow-up action that should be taken by the President of the United States on this particular issue, because there is some talk that the President, as a matter of fact, the President did announce this morning, just a little while ago, that he was going to go ahead and declare an emergency to get more funds for building the wall. So again, that's where Rush Limbaugh could emphasize values by coming out and saying what should happen. And that goes the same thing with the Democrats. If you're going to go ahead and spend time talking about Democrats and Democrat proposals, then at least do so in terms of values. First of all, what you want to do is state whether or not the Democrats are right or wrong on whatever proposal that they're making. He talked about Menendez, and Menendez, blew up at somebody. But Rush Limbaugh didn't critique him. He didn't say that Menendez was wrong. Was he wrong to do this? He used this shocked tone of voice about how Menendez went off on this intern from the Daily Caller. Well, was he wrong to do that? And if so, why? Was it because it was rude, or was it because it was wrong for a more substantive and a deeper reason? Then what you're doing is you're talking values. The left doesn't want anybody to discuss values. They do not want people to discuss right and wrong. This is the way you shape culture. Okay, this is the battle. This is where the battle is. Are we going to talk about values, or are we not? And if we don't, and we get in the habit of not discussing values, then why shouldn't we all just vote for the Green New Deal and be done with it? Because if we're not going to discuss values, then we've gone ahead and gone left culturally. And if we're going to go left culturally, sooner or later, we're going to start voting left. Remember that as Mr. Limbaugh mentioned about Ocasio-Cortez, the representative from New York, she is a big lefty. She was elected properly, and I don't know for sure, but I strongly speculate, that she got Republican votes. I speculate further that she got conservative votes. Why? Why would any conservative or Republican in their right mind vote for a blatant, flagrant socialist? Why? Because they've been influenced culturally. They have been told, either directly or indirectly, that values don't count, don't matter, or just flat out don't exist. And instead of challenging that notion, they go ahead and just go along with it. Then, surprise, surprise, when you're voting in people like Miss Ocasio-Cortez. So when I come back, I'm going to be reading from the Ayn Rand lexicon. Thank you very much. Welcome back. And from the Ayn Rand lexicon, the concept of the day is fascism and communism / socialism. Now, yesterday I read fascism and Nazism. So I'm assuming that she's going to go ahead and contrast or compare the fascism and communism and socialism. For many decades, the leftists have been propagating the false dichotomy that the choice confronting the world is only communism or fascism, a dictatorship of the left, or an alleged right, with the possibility of a free society if capitalism dismissed and obliterated as if it had never existed. Some moderates, quote unquote, are trying to revive that old saw of pre-World War II vintage, that notion that two political opposites confronting us, the two extremes are fascism versus communism. The political origin of that notion is more shameful than the moderates would care publicly to admit. Mussolini came to power by claiming that that was the only choice confronting Italy. Hitler came to power by claiming that that was the only choice confronting Germany. It is a matter of record that in the German election of 1933, the Communist Party was ordered by its leaders to vote for the Nazis, with the explanation that they could later fight the Nazis for power, but first they had to help destroy their common enemy, capitalism, and its parliamentary form of government. And the slogan in those days, by the way, was by the communists was "First brown, then red." Back to the book. It is obvious what the fraudulent issue of fascism versus communism accomplishes. It sets up, as opposites, two variants of the same political system. It eliminates the possibility of considering capitalism. It switches the choice of, quote, freedom or dictatorship, unquote, into, quote, which kind of dictatorship, unquote, thus establishing dictatorship as an inevitable fact and offering only a choice of rulers. The choice, according to the proponents of that fraud, is a dictatorship of the rich, fascism, or a dictatorship of the poor, communism. That fraud collapsed in the 1940s in the aftermath of World War II. It is too obvious, too easily demonstrable that fascism and communism are not two opposites, but two rival gangs fighting over the same territory. That both are variants of statism based on the collectivist principle that man is the rightless slave of the state, that both are socialistic in theory, in practice, and in the explicit statements of their leaders, that under both systems the poor are enslaved and the rich are expropriated in favor of a ruling clique, that fascism is not the product of a political right, but of the left, that the basic issue is not rich versus poor, but man versus the state, or individual rights versus totalitarian government, which means capitalism versus socialism. The main characteristic, of socialism and communism is public ownership of the means of production, and therefore the abolition of private property. The right to property is the right of use and disposal. Under fascism, men retain their semblance or pretense of private property, but the government holds total power over its use and disposal. So it goes on, but I'm going to go ahead and stop it there. And she hits the nail right on the head. And there's another book a book that was written all about this, and what was it? It was Jonah Goldberg that wrote it about fascism, and it has a picture of a smiley face with a little Hitler mustache on it. And the whole book is about how fascism and Nazism are of the left. They always were, they are today, and they always will be. And again, how does it come about that Nazism and fascism end up being of the right? Simple, because of this issue-based politics crapola. It's like I said, if you're going to be running around saying, I'm conservative because I'm anti-abortion, guess what? David Duke, the grand leader of the Ku Klux Klan, is going to come over, put his arm around your shoulder and say, hey, brother, I'm a conservative too because I hate abortion as much as you do. I hate big government as much as you do. Okay? I'm as pro-military as you are. Now what are you going to do? How do you stop the argument that says that the KKK, the Nazis, etc., are conservative or on the right? You can't from that perspective. You're screwed. The only thing you can do is try to disown them. Say, well, yes, I'm a conservative, but no, that's the KKK. They're way out on the extreme. I'm mainstream or some crap like that. But the fact of the matter is that Nazis and KKKers are not conservative because they do not make the presumption for the status quo. Okay? They are idealistic. Nazis, and that's why they're of the left. The left is idealistic. The left wants a perfect society. The communists want a perfect society in which that's basically based on the poor. That we get rid of all the rich people, all the money is then redistributed to everybody. Everybody lives pretty much the same. There's no classes, no rich, no poor, no middle class. Everybody lives pretty much the same way. And Nazism is talking about a perfect nation, a nation that's socialized and having the perfect nation with no outside. For instance, Germany for the Germans, France for the French. And so the ideal states there would be France would be full of only French people, Germany would be full of only German people, and all other people would have to go somewhere else. That was basically what was happening in World War II, at least in the early stages, when they were getting rid of not only Jews, but Slavs and Gypsies and people like that. Anybody that was not what Hitler considered Aryan, part of the Aryan race, was out. Okay, because that was the nationalistic part of it. And that's trying to create an ideal society. KKK wants an ideal society too. They want the ideal white society. They want a society that is run and lived in by only white people. All non-whites should get out. Okay? Conservatives are not idealistic. We are realistic. We take the world as it comes. We make the presumption for the status quo. We don't look around saying the world sucks and so always out in excuse looking for a way to change things. We presume that everything is fine the way it is until there is evidence to the contrary. That is the fundamental difference between being a conservative, i.e. a capitalist, and being on the left. So back in a minute, and I may be reading, I'm not sure if I'm going to go to Out of the Ashes or Alinsky Defeated. We'll see. And thank you very much. Welcome back. And let's see what we got here. Got rules for radicals out of the ashes. I'm going to go with the 30 covert manipulative techniques. I haven't read from that one in a while. Chapter 5, the most powerful motivator on the planet, intermittent reinforcement. This book is basically designed to help people spot crappy relationships. You're involved with a man or a woman that is manipulative, narcissistic, and whatnot, and you can spot that you are being manipulated, how you're being manipulated, and how to deal with it. But these are also techniques that are used by the left socio-politically. They use them in Washington, D.C., and those people on the left in your family, in your workplace, and that you run into at the grocery store use these techniques also, but again, with socio-political aims or goals to them. There's nothing like the bliss and elation of new love, especially when you believe you found the one, that takes it to another level. You may feel you've never really knew what love was before and experience incredible joy and happiness. And then one day, something unexpected might happen. You'll get a queasy feeling that you can't shake. You'll sense deep in your gut that he or she is pulling away, but you won't know why. Your heart will sink and your stomach will clench with fear. In the process of a pathological relationship, the moment when the joy at finding love turns into the fear of losing it is called the manipulative shift. When that happens, the manipulator takes control. The person who idealized you now devalues you. A long and painful ride downhill begins. Fear takes away our ability to think clearly. It's an intensely powerful and uncomfortable emotion, and we want to feel safe again. In this case, fear is caused by the threat of losing who we believe is our loving and wonderful partner. When we feel fear, we will give just about anything to the person who can take that fear away. In this situation, that person is the very one who caused it in the first place, the manipulator. He or she can take away our fear by becoming attentive and loving again. And we try hard to regain that attention and love. The manipulator shows us how and keeps us hooked on them, even through the use of covert manipulation. If fear is something we want to avoid, how does a manipulator use it to keep us hooked? By alternating fear with another extremely powerful emotion, love. Creating fear of losing the relationship and then relieving it periodically with episodes of love and attention employs a powerful technique of manipulation known as intermittent reinforcement. Those positive episodes that banish our fear release a potent dose of feel-good hormones and neurotransmitters, including dopamine, which induces euphoria. Have you ever gone to a casino and played a slot machine? You'll feed in quarters and pull the handle over and over and watch colorful images of fruit and numbers and bells whiz by. If you don't win anything, you start to fear that you might lose all your money you already put in, let alone not win the jackpot. So you're compelled to keep trying. What if you walk away from this machine now and the next person to sit down pulls the handle and wins? You insert a few more quarters, pull the handle, and amazingly, images of a red cherry line up. Bells ring and colorful lights flash. Quarters pour out of the machine and into your waiting hands. This reward causes your brain to light up too. By releasing a burst of pleasure-inducing dopamine, you want more. Your fear vanishes. You have your money back. And now that you have all those shiny quarters, there's no reason not to keep playing. Who knows? Maybe you'll win the big jackpot. You start feeding the machine again. You alternate between the thrill and relief of winning small jackpots and the fear of losing it all. You're hooked. Psychology researchers have long considered intermittent reinforcement the most powerful motivator on the planet. It is also the most maliciously manipulative tactic. Intermittent reinforcement is simply unpredictable random rewards in response to repeated behavior, but there is no more powerful formula to get someone to feel or act in a desired way. It can be elevated gradually to extreme levels, creating compliance that is obsessive and even self-destructive. You won't notice it for what it is when it's happening unless you're aware of the tactic and how it works. In a manipulative relationship, the more infrequently the crumbs of love are offered, the more hooked you get. You become conditioned, like a rat in a laboratory cage. When rats are taught to press a lever that randomly dispenses a delicious morsel, they press the lever obsessively. After a while, they'll keep pressing the lever even if no more morsels come out, until they starve to death. I think this is an unconscionable experiment, by the way. Similarly, we may hold on to a partner in a relationship where there is no more love to be had. Lab rats are taught to press the lever by starting them out with a continuous positive reinforcement. Think of it as treat bombing in place of love bombing. When the experiment begins, every time the rat presses the lever, she gets a morsel. Then the researchers change the game. The rat presses the lever, but a morsel isn't delivered with every press anymore, only on random presses. The rat is fearful that she won't get fed, but she knows pressing the lever brought food in the past. So she keeps pressing it until she gets a morsel every once in a while. She keeps pressing it. When the morsels stop coming, she's sure she'll get one next time she presses it, or the time after that. So she never stops trying. It works the same way in a manipulative relationship. You are the rat, and the morsel you keep trying for is love. Intermittent reinforcement plays a big role in the phenomenon of traumatic bonding. A trauma bond is a very strong attachment to an abuser that develops not in spite of manipulation and abuse, but because of it. Powerful emotional attachments are seen to develop from two specific features of abusive relationships: power imbalances and intermittent good-bad treatment. According to psychology researchers Donald Dutton and S. Painter, quote, emotional attachments in abusive relationships, a test of traumatic bonding theory, unquote, Violence in Victims, Volume 8, 1993. Intermittent reinforcement begins insidiously. The stage of continual positive reinforcement, love bombing, ends. Perhaps a phone call or a text message isn't returned or doesn't come at the usual time. A hand that always held ours as we walk down the street is kept in a pocket instead. We witness our partner flirting with somebody else, although they deny it. For a week, they aren't in the mood to make love. They subtly or overtly criticize or demean us for our weight, our age, our ideas or opinions, or some quirk they once claimed to love. They compare us unfavorably to somebody else. They give us the silent treatment. Little by little it gets worse, much worse, but there is always the times you are given a few morsels of love. Your partner reverts back to being loving and attentive person they used to be. All hope is not lost. You're unwittingly put on an emotional roller coaster, riding it to dizzying heights that alternate with death-defying drops. What can you do to prevent being victimized by intermittent reinforcement? It's hard to recognize if you know nothing about it. But now you're armed with knowledge. Here are some things to keep in mind for future relationships. Consider the trustworthiness of your partner on an ongoing basis. Once he or she gains your trust, it's very easy for them to get away with a lot of bad behavior. After all, you have a solid image of them as trustworthy. But trust shouldn't be given once and then last forever. A person's trustworthiness should be reevaluated as needed. How can you tell if your partner is still deserving of your trust? Trust is based on three aspects: predictability, dependability, and faith. Predictability is the consistency of your partner's behavior, and predictable behavior is in stark contrast to the unpredictability of intermittent good, bad, or hot, cold treatment. Dependability is the degree to which you trust your partner to be honest and reliable. Faith represents your conviction that your partner will be responsive to your needs and can be counted on to behave in a kind and caring manner. Don't judge your partner's trustworthiness by how they were in the past. Consider the three elements of trust at the present time. Skilled manipulators are good at gaining our trust, but not so good at keeping it. They count on our image of them as trustworthy as a substitute for actually being trustworthy. Keep in mind the signs in yourself that you're being manipulated, which you learned previously in Chapter 2, quote, how to tell if you're being manipulated, unquote. You will not feel like that in a healthy, normal relationship. Those signs are reliable indicators that intermittent reinforcement and other manipulative tactics are at play. Look for the hallmarks of a healthy relationship: intimacy, commitment, consistency, balance, progression, shared values, love, care, trust, and respect. And I want to say real quick, shared values jumps out at me because is Ayn Rand that said correctly, she was right when she said that you cannot love somebody that is diametrically opposed to everything you stand for. Back to the book. Listen to any alarm bells that go off in your head, and listen to friends and family members who are known to have your best interest at heart. Don't ignore them, no matter how much you would like to. Become and stay conscious of the power balance of the relationship. The person who cares less has the power. Be aware that when you feel chronically insecure, heartsick, anxious, or hurt, you can get caught up in the drama of abuse and become blind to the larger dynamic at work. Is this a healthy relationship, one that you're thriving within, or not. Ask yourself if your relationship is based on real emotional intimacy or if you're being tricked into accepting intensity as a substitute. Find out how to answer that questions by reading the next chapter. And the next chapter is Intimacy or Intensity, a Relationship Litmus Test. But again, all of this should be looked at in terms of those people that you have relationships with that are that may be lefties in your life, whether they're family members, coworkers, somebody that you run into at the grocery store or on the soccer field, because the lefties in your life will use these kinds of tactics because the left is about might makes right, and the ends justify the means. So at this point, that brings us to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. And until next time, thank you very much for listening, and have a great day.